Sing me a song of a lass that is gone.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Kaylee and today's video is another video in the Go Tell the Bees That I Am Gone series. Now this book was written by Diana Gabaldon, and if you have not been following along and this is the first video you've found on the channel, then just a pre-warning, these Go Tell the Bees That I Am Gone videos are full of spoilers. So if you're not prepared to know what is happening in the chapters that we're going to talk about today, then please go to another video. I'm sure there'll be something here on the channel that you will enjoy. So I just want to reassure everybody that generalized Outlander content that covers both book and shows is also coming back to the channel. I've had a few, and by few, I've had a lot of Instagram inboxes asking when I'm going to go back to that because they haven't read Bees and they're not a book reader, but they love the content on the channel. So I just want to assure you, I promise it's all going to get back to normal. I'm just trying to smash this out as quickly as possible now. I have definitely overcommitted with the Bees chapter by chapter book review. So we're going to bunch a lot of the chapters together and get this series under wraps, because I know there are lots of TV show only fans here on the channel and they're starting to get annoyed. And they're starting to be saying, like, the inboxes are telling me that you're missing out and they are not happy. So I'm very, very sorry. I'm definitely going to start pumping out both lots of content very, very soon. The first chapter I want to talk about in today's video is chapter 34, which was called The Son of a Preacher Man. So if you remember, the last video that we did was all about William and where he is and where Lord John Grey is and all that sort of stuff. So this chapter has jumped back to Fraser's Ridge. Now, the meeting house, the elusive meeting house that is being built by, well, lots of different people, has finally been built and is fully constructed. So we open up the chapter and everyone is sort of gathered, all those involved in it, to discuss who and what time and things like that. They're going to have their own meetings, their own services, their sermons and things like that. Now, during this first little bit, we learned that Bree has actually agreed to teach some of the school kids between the hours of 9 and 11 each morning. We also find out that, you know, both Roger and Captain Cunningham are there and they're ready to go. They want to know who's going to do their service at what time and who's going to go first. And then we also find out that Rachel is still there and very much wanting to have a go and have her meetings at the meeting house on the Sundays as well. Basically, everybody is really getting along throughout this chapter, which is really, really nice to see. Now, when it came down to who was going to have the very first sermon of the sort of Roger and Captain Cunningham, it was done by flip of coin and Captain Cunningham won. So he is ultimately going to have the first service at the meeting house, which, I mean, that's pretty cool. Also, really, if that was, I would rather him go first, just so that, you know, Roger, he can sort of see what's happening, what's going on. Anyway, he does go and he does have the very first service. And it's during this service that we learn that his son was killed in battle. The whole day, though, is really, the entire ridge is basically here for everybody's services, and they do go one after the other. So Captain Cunningham has had his service and has wrapped it up sort of thing. Then Roger comes into play, and during his sermon, he also has Bree speaking and Jamie speaking as well. It's really an entire day's out for everybody, and many people have sort of made comment throughout the chapter that, wow, like, this is an entire day's worth of entertainment. You know, there's nothing else to do. Of course, we're going to be at all three events, including Rachel's friends meeting. So obviously, people are there to just learn, basically. And Rachel is she's so loving and open to anyone to come along, obviously, and they do. And there are the odd questions like, so what are we meant to do, Rachel? What's going on here? And she explains that, well, you sit and you reflect, and if you want to ask a question, please feel free. If you just want to sit here and be quiet, you're welcome to do that. And it's really interesting to see the dynamics of the three different ways the services and the sermons and Rachel's meeting are all conducted. And I think this is, for me, I personally am not religious in any aspect, and I have no problem with anybody's religion. You know, do whatever you want. That's your choice, whatever. And I was really fascinated to see how the characters interacted between all three sort of services and sermons. I really found that fascinating. This chapter was not long, of course, and it was all conducted in that day, and the entire contents of the day was the chapter. So it was a really nice way to see the conclusiveness of the meeting house being built and the fact that, yes, okay, it's complete. They've all officially done their first sermon. It sort of rounded it out. You know, that big build that everyone was going to put in together and help each other out with, it's definitely concluded and it's done. And I really believe that this chapter was just that icing on the cake to say, yeah, we've built it, it's done, it's there. Everybody's happily doing their thing, their services, their meetings. There's your chapter to say it's done. Now, chapter 35 opens up with a letter from the now promoted Captain Brigsby. And in his letter to Jamie, we have some pretty devastating news. So it's revealed throughout the letter that Dr. Hunter, also known as Denzel Hunter, who is Dottie's husband, has been captured by the British. Now, if you've forgotten sort of who Denzel and Dottie are, Dottie is Hal's, Lord John Grey's brother's daughter. So Lord John Grey's niece. And her husband, Denzel, who is Rachel's brother. There's so many different connections here, it's hard to keep track of sometimes, and I do find that I like to have it sort of spelled out for me on occasion. And it was in this chapter, it was most certainly talked about who everybody was in a nice storytelling way, but just if you're like me and you on occasion forget who's brother, sister, friend, cousin, whatever, that's how they're connected. Now, of course, Denzel and Claire are very close. They're great friends. Denzel was, in fact, the doctor who basically saved Claire's life. So when she learns the news that he has been captured by the British, her first reaction is, we must tell Lord John Grey and see if he will help. Of course, we know what's been happening with the triangle of Lord John Grey, Claire and Jamie. And this instant sentence of we need to write a letter, or no, not we, but Claire would like to write a letter, infuriates Jamie. Our very strong-willed, pig-headed Scottish Jamie becomes very, very, very vocal in the fact that, no, you will not be writing a letter to Lord John Grey at all. This, of course, leads to a fairly heated discussion where we see Jamie eventually huff off away. Now, when I was reading this chapter, I thought that is so funny because I have been talking about how William has this huff off and he, you know, he storms off and then Jamie did the exact same thing. And I thought, wow, it really does show the connection. They really are related and their mannerisms are very much the same. That is something that I don't think could have been taught. It is just in William's blood. Like, he has definitely just adopted that sort of mannerisms from Jamie. That's been a passed down trait. So when I read that, I thought, oh, wow, I've been bagging out William. Am I actually going to say, you know, well, Jamie, you shouldn't have stormed off like that? And yeah, well, I really don't believe he should have stormed off. I just want this whole quarrel to be over with. I love Lord John Grey and Jamie, and I want them to be like besties again. It's starting to annoy me that they're not, and it's starting to, I mean, obviously it's a fairly big deal, but it's starting to drag out and I'm a little bit at the end of it. I just want them happiness. It's probably not going to even happen in this book the way we're going, but just a little bit would have been nice at this point. Now, as soon as Jamie storms off, we notice that young Fanny was there listening in and basically heard the majority of the conversation. Now, she comes up and she starts talking to Claire, and it's during the discussions with Claire that we find out that, wow, Fanny is a well of information. She knows pretty much every big family secret that is going on here. She knows that Claire has slept with Lord John. She knows that Jamie is William's father. There are so many little bits of tidbits of information that young Fanny, a 12-year-old girl, knows that she probably shouldn't. And I find this concerning because even though I on occasion forget how young Fanny is, the fact that she is just 12 years old and she knows so many different little things here, it's going to come out. She's going to slip. She's going to tell the wrong person something. Even though Claire, throughout this chapter, does tell her, you know, if there's anything you ever want to talk about, anything at all, no matter what it is, you are able to come and talk to Claire herself, Jamie, Roger, or Bree, because they all have an understanding of the world that other people on the Ridge will not have. So you're welcome and encouraged to come and talk about absolutely anything. And Claire really did emphasize the fact that she could speak about anything at all to any of them, but only any of them. because telling other people on the ridge would most certainly not put Fanny in the best light. Let's just say that. So Claire was really emphasizing this to Fanny, and she did seemingly understand the importance of what Claire was saying, but I'm really, really worried about this. I feel like this was a little stepping stone of, we know Fanny knows a lot. She knows an absolute lot, and she's only 12. Kids talk. It's just what they do. Something else that was emphasized in this chapter was the fact that poor young Fanny was again worried that she was about to be sort of exiled from the ridge and from the family. Now, when Jamie did storm off, one of the last things he yelled at Claire was, "Damn William." Now, Fanny, of course, overheard this and assumed that it meant that Jamie was really angry at William. We know, in fact, he wasn't, but poor Fanny, again, she's 12. Like, she's there just overhearing lots of different things, apparently, and it definitely put the worry back into her mind. Claire did again reassure her, though, that no matter what, she will never be kicked out of this family. She will never be asked to leave the ridge. She's never going to be set aside. But this time, I don't think Fanny fully just believed her. I think there was that little seed of doubt inside Fanny's mind that just, it was there, and I don't think that went away this time, which I think is probably going to come out later on. Maybe, again, a stepping stone towards something else. Maybe. But just, yeah, Fanny, she's very unassured of her position in this family, and that's really worrying, considering how many secrets she also knows. Then we go straight into chapter 36, which was titled What Lies Unseen. Now, in this chapter, everything that I thought was going to happen basically happened. I knew that Claire was not going to just leave it at that. Jamie was not just going to say, "Do not write a letter," and it was just going to be sort of swept under the rug. Claire goes straight to Bree, which is exactly what I thought was going to happen. Little side note, I was so glad that I realised that this was going to be the outcome. It really does prove that I'm starting to understand these characters a little bit better. And goes straight to Bree and asks her to write a letter to Lord John Grey. Now, Bree isn't silly by any means, and after a bit getting the entire story of who Denzel Hunter actually is and how he's connected, and, you know, the ties that Claire has to him, she picks up that Claire does call Hal, Dottie's father, obviously, by his first name, Hal. And Bree's like, well, why can't you write the letter if you're on a first name basis with the family friends that you're wanting the letter to be written to? What's going on? Bree obviously knows straight away that there is a underlining sort of moment here that she's not knowing enough about. We know Claire will never lie to Bree, so basically she has to come out and tell Bree what has happened. She explains how she slept with Lord John Grey and just, you know, everything that's sort of going on here. She did try to skim through it, but she ultimately, Bree now knows what is going on. Now, her mind, she's like, wow, what? You know, obviously that's a lot of information to take in. At the same time, Jamie walks past the window and catches everybody off guard, but he's just there and sees Claire and asks her to go and help fix somebody's thumb who had just hit their thumb or something. Claire goes off and basically says to Bree, I will be back in just a few seconds. Like, just hold that thought. Don't go nowhere. It is while Claire has left, though, Bree starts to have what I first assumed was another panic attack. This very quickly got scrubbed off. Like, it's not a panic attack. There is something very, very wrong with Bree at this point. She could not breathe, and ultimately her heart stopped beating for a few seconds. She was able to get it back started, obviously, because when she returned, Claire comes straight in running, but could see what had happened. Could see that there was something very much wrong. Bree then explained that she had been having these moments on and off since they came back through the stones. Now, I really thought the last one that we sort of read about was a panic attack. I was completely dumbfounded when this was all being revealed in this chapter. I just could not believe that we're going to have another, like, heart issue here in the family. I'm not ready for this. Of course, Claire goes just straight into doctor mode at this point, and she does examine Bree. And after a while, it is discovered that she thinks that Bree has a condition that is not very fatal at this point in time, as long as she sort of keeps it under check and keeps it under wrap. Now, I do know that it was said what it was in the book, but I can't remember exactly what this condition was. But Claire did suggest that if Bree sort of had an attack coming on, that she should put her face into cold water or hold her breath in an attempt to try and shock her heart back into its right rhythm. So I don't know about you, but all I know is that this chapter scared me a little bit. It really scares me that there is something medically wrong with Bree. And the fact that I feel she's sort of adopted this sort of condition because she's come and gone through the stones. I mean, I'm really worried. I'm really worried that everyone's been so worried about the fact that one day Jamie and Claire will die. What if it's Bree? And what if that heartbreak is what kills Jamie and Claire? I mean, it's probably a really early, and this is really like not the right time to put my thoughts into this. But at the end of this book series, I am most certainly going to put out all the horrible things that I think are going to come up in the last book. It could have even happened in this book and I don't know yet, although I think the internet would have gone mad by now. But this chapter just scared me. What did you think about this? When we found out what's going on here with Bree, what were your first initial thoughts about this? Because I am very, very worried. Chapter 37 is titled Maneuvers That Begin with the Letter V. Now, this chapter takes place the following day, at the end of the day, after supper has been sort of done and served and everything's gone about. Now, Claire does say how she's been very well, like, there's just been no communication with Jamie in regards to their argument. They've been very civil to each other, but there is clearly a little bit of tension going on in the air. Now, of course, nobody likes tension in the air, and Claire definitely doesn't like it. So she asks Jamie to go for a walk with her, and they can finally have some alone time to sort of discuss everything that they've just had the argument about. But in a typical Jamie and Claire style, both of them flare up with anger when the discussion again turns to the fact that Claire has slept with Lord John Grey. Now, things are said, and Claire basically says, well, you said that you forgive me, and Jamie says, well, yeah, okay, I said I forgive you, which infuriates Claire. And I mean infuriates her. She goes off tap, which I love because I kind of agree with her. She explains to Jamie in a very angry way that there's actually nothing that he has to forgive her for. She did absolutely nothing wrong. She didn't really cheat on him because everybody assumed he was dead. He wasn't there. He wasn't, you know, it wasn't as if it was unfaithfulness or she cheated on him or anything like that. Everybody thought he was dead. So, you know, there's nothing really that he has the right to forgive her for. This, of course, infuriates Jamie, and we know how their arguments play out. This is where we get our very first steamy sex scene for this book, I believe. I mean, we know what happens. They definitely love their angry sex scenes in this book. Jamie and Claire definitely love to have angry sex. I think it's magnificent the way that Diana writes these sex scenes into the book. And this one in particular, I thought, wow, this is exactly how I would have imagined them sort of getting over this argument. Because there was really nobody was going to back down from this. Nobody was going to say, okay, you're right, I'm wrong. It was most certainly going to be, you know, let's just have sex and we'll go back to being lovey-dovey. I just could never see this coming out as Jamie saying, okay, you're right, or Claire saying, okay, you're right. It was just never going to happen. This was ultimately the only way that I could see this couple getting over or having this sort of conversation ending was with this sex scene. And it was so well done. I mean, all of the sex scenes in Outlander are fantastic. Diana Gabaldon does such a great job. But this one I really liked. It was just short, swift, and chapter length. Just getting to the point. Bang, we've had our ceasefire sort of information overload for the chapter. Some of the sex scenes throughout all of the Outlander books have been a great big subject of discussion throughout the internet and forums and things like that. And I have said earlier on that there aren't many sex scenes in this book so far, which really did shock me until we got to this previous chapter. But what do you believe? Do you believe that this is how it's playing out? Like, we're just going to get less and less sex scenes and we're going to get more sort of character information? Or have I just not read enough into this book? Or how do you think this is playing out? Do you think it's just the same amount as the other books? Does that make sense? Like, am I overthinking the fact that there haven't been many sex scenes in this book and we're up to chapter what was it, 37? Something like that, 30 something. I don't know. What do you think about it? I would absolutely love to know. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please consider doing so. It really does help the channel grow. I hope you're all having a great week, and I'll see you very shortly for another Outlander video. Have a great day. Bye.
Sing me a song of a lass that is gone.